Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to give you guys an update of my chrysanthemum here. So this is one that I've taken from a cutting. Basically there was a bouquet of flowers and I noticed that the stems weren't dying, and I had a quick look at them, and even after a month of having them the stem was still alive and there was little roots starting to grow and also new growth. So what I did is I potted two of them up in this pot here. This one unfortunately seemed to have died now. It did have a lot of aphids on it. I think that's probably what finally killed it, because it was in a similar state to this one, but just for some reason didn't seem to grow, and as I said there was a lot of aphids on it. This one shot out new shoots, and as you can see it was only up to about this height, but in the last few months you can see it's grown all the way up there. It's probably about 2 foot tall now, so it's actually too high for my windows because my windows are only about 2 foot high, so I'm gonna have to prune it now. I was just gonna leave it and see what kind of shape it grew, because I know normally people keep pinching out the growing tip to try and get a nice bushy shape. But I just let it grow just to see what would happen, and as you can see it hasn't put on any branching yet. It's got a few tiny little shoots trying to grow out the leaf margin, out where the leaves attach to the stem and the internodes, but they haven't really come to anything. Although the most recent section at the top does seem to have a few more branches starting to form. So it looks like it will branch if I left it a little bit longer, but as I say I need to cut it because it's just too high for my window. So I'll probably turn this into a standard actually, because this is great material for turning into a standard. It's got a long straight stem. I'll probably need to stake it at some point once it starts thickening up at the top, and I think eventually it will snap off, because unfortunately the way that it's grown, half the stem died off and the other half is alive, and it's kept growing with that kind of dead half and alive half. What's going to happen is this dead half will rot off, infection might eventually spread to the live half, and it's probably just going to snap off at that point. But if it keeps quite healthy and vigorous, it might be able to just manage to keep itself upright. But I'll just have to keep an eye on that. So as I say, it's done really well, especially if you consider how small the pot is. You can see it's only like a 13 centimeter pot. It's really grown quite big. So in this video I'm basically just going to cut the top off, probably about this kind of height here, just above the node. If I wanted to, I could turn this into a cutting again. I'm not too bothered about having any more than one chrysanthemum plant, because to be honest I don't really have the space for them, so I don't think I will take a cutting from that. But what this will do is all these buds at the top here will soon start to sprout and start growing. You can see there's plenty of them. There's quite a lot. Every single little section where the nodes are, there's all these little shoots coming out. So they'll grow quite rapidly now that the leader's taken out. Basically the hormone from the leader suppresses those side shoots. Once that hormone stopped, then all these side shoots will start growing. So it should be a little ball of growth. What I'm going to do is just kind of keep pinching it into just like a ball, like a standard. The bottom leaf should fall off, and it'll just be a clear stem with like kind of mop head of like a lollipop tree kind of shape. And what's going to happen is these only flower late in the year. Basically, they only start flowering when the days get shorter. But up here in Scotland, because we have such long days until the autumn equinox, this tends to flower really quite late. It normally flowers kind of October, November time. By that time it's normally too dark and too cold for it here in Scotland, so it doesn't really flower very well. If people grow chrysanthemums in Scotland, they're fine if you buy them from a shop, but if you just leave them in the garden to grow year after year, they tend to not really flower very well. You can only really get them to flower nicely if you pick a variety that's well suited to Scotland, or if you grow them in the greenhouse. That's the other way you can get them to flower nicely in Scotland. So I'll see how this does. I'll probably have to keep it inside. I'll continue to keep it inside until it flowers, and I'll probably put it outside in winter for its winter rest. It can take light frosts, probably -3, -4, shouldn't be an issue. But if there's any hard frost, I'll have to take it in again, because it's not fully hardy, unfortunately. So I'll give you guys updates as this goes along. As I say, hopefully I'll send out lots of new shoots, keep pruning it, and we should have some nice flowers come probably October, November time. I can actually force this because it's daylight sensitive. What you can do is you can basically just put it in a cupboard every evening and reduce the amount of daylight it gets. As long as you keep the daylight length under about 8-10 hours, then it starts to flower. So you can make it flower any time of year if you just control the lighting. But it's a lot of work. You either got to have an automatic light and this in a dark cupboard, so no other light can interfere with it, or every single day you need to put it in the cupboard, say about 5 o'clock in the evening, take it out the cupboard maybe like 9 in the morning to give it light, It's a lot of work, so I'm just going to let it wait and let it flower naturally. It'll also mean it'll grow a lot bigger and more vigorously. And when it starts to turn into flowering, it gets less daylight, and with the less daylight hours, it doesn't have as much energy to grow. And also all the energy is just going into flower buds and flower formation, so it won't really put on much stem growth at that time of year. So I'm just going to leave it to flower naturally, and hopefully we'll have some flowers come October, November time. This variety I think was a white one, if I remember correctly. So it should have quite large white flowers, although the size of the flower is quite dependent on how many stems it has. So if I just left this without cutting the top off and just had one big flower on the top, it would be a really large flower. But because it's going to have lots of side shoots, and all those side shoots will have lots of flowers, that'll probably be quite a small size. But we'll just see how it does, and I'll give you guys an update probably in a couple of months when it starts branching.